welcome back to another edition of the Prepper Recon podcast. Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including fish antibiotics, long-term storage food, and water filters. Use coupon code PrepperRecon for 5% off your order at CampingSurvival.com. Today's guest is Dr. Kirk Elliot from McIlvaney Financial Group. Dr. Kirk, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks, Mark. It's great to be back with you.
Oh, absolutely. So the markets are off to a horrible start for 2016. Are you expecting a bad year?
I am. And, last time I spoke on your show, kind of talked about how I thought that from September of 2015 and September of 2016 were going to be kind of bookends. And in between, you were going to start to see a lot of unraveling because you had Janet Yellen that started to raise rates. Okay, so she only raised them 25 basis points. But now what are we seeing in China? China is devaluing their currency. So what started was a currency war. And this is, man, I've shouted this from the rooftop for years. It's like when this starts, it's going to be a snowball effect because the international bond markets, the currency markets, they're so competitive. And every country wants foreign capital inflows coming into their treasuries. So when we raise rates, now Europe is going to have to raise rates. China's going to have to raise rates. They're all going to have to raise rates to be on a competitive field again. And then it just goes full circle. And another country will raise them, and then everybody tries to compete. So like we saw from 1983 until now, with competitive rate decreases, we've hit a point of kind of like no return. We've gotten so low you can't go any lower. And it can only go up from here. So now it's going to happen in the other direction. Well, that's going to have chaos on the markets. We're seeing that. We're seeing that with the Dow. We're seeing that with the S&P. We're seeing that in Europe. We're seeing it in China, especially. Oh my word! But we're starting to see these kind of things spiral out of control. And when rates spiral out of control, who does that hurt the most? Well, people who carry debt. and so this is where I think, America is gonna really feel the pinch, and pretty much the rest of the world who's living beyond their means and in debt are going to feel the pinch as rates start to increase.
And now Obama just issued some more executive action on gun control, and this time he's saying that he's going to keep people who can't handle their own finances from purchasing guns with $18 trillion debt. Do you think the federal government is going to fall into that category? And if so, do you think they're going to be allowed to purchase guns for the military?
It's a great question. Of course not, though, because they're the ultimate nanny state. The babysitter can do whatever they want to do, but no, not the kids. And so that's how they view it. They want to tell us how to live, how we should do it, when we should do it, and the rules don't apply to them. Same reason that Congress doesn't really have to abide by, Obamacare. No, they don't want the health care that they passed. And I think it just kind of goes along that flow.
And then we got to talk a little bit about China because, it's just kind of in full meltdown. I mean, of course, their circuit breaker triggers it at 7%, where ours, we just get a level 1 circuit breaker at 7%. I think that we close for like 15 minutes or something like that and open back up until 13%. And then if we hit 20%, then we close down for the day. But as we're recording this, China's already kicked that 7% circuit breaker, closed trading for the entire day twice. What's going on over there?
Wow. Well, they've lived with so much debt. They've lived with so much margin. I mean, their stock markets have seen a meteoric rise over the last couple of years. But when you look at it, it's done with leverage. It's done in a way that it's just unsustainable. I mean, probably twice to triple the amount of leverage that's on the New York Stock Exchange. So when you've got people trading on these and then they start to get margin calls, you just can't operate on those kind of multiples and expect the game to keep being played. And that's all that's happening. I think the banks are starting to tighten up on their credit because they just don't have it anymore. Well, when they do that and a decline and people are getting margin called, and they have to come up with a difference, but they can't go to the bank to get their loan. I mean, it's just this domino effect downward. And I think that's just what happens. Debt, Mark, becomes the Achilles heel of families, of individuals, of states, of companies, of countries. And that's exactly what's happening to China. Just way too overextended, too much debt. Now, as soon as they tighten it up a little bit, it upsets the apple cart. And so I don't see this free fall ending anytime real soon, actually. I mean, we saw this kind of happen earlier this year when the Chinese stock market just came crashing down. When was it? That was around September. I think it was in September, October timeframe. They were down in good double digits, 20, 30% over a very short period of time. And I think we're just going to continue on with that because nothing has changed. They didn't fix the problem. They just try to cover it up. That's like in America. Hey, we have a debt problem, so let's issue more debt to fix our debt problem. I mean, I think the same thing is happening over there. It's just bizarro world. It makes no sense.
And then while we're on the subject of China, the yuan's been admitted into the IMF's special drawing rights. What does that mean for the dollar? What does that mean for the globe?
Well, they've been admitted, and I think it takes effect later this year, possibly by September, October of 2016. But what it's going to mean is you've got 4 currencies in that right now. You've got the U.S. dollar, the British pound, the euro, and the yen, I believe. So now when you add one more, well, what you've done is you've basically gone from 4 to 5. So that's 25 to 20, a 25% decrease in the valuation of the other ones when you add another bucket. So it's just going to have another choice. It's going to detract demand away from those other currencies and really not be good for those other currencies. Now, what they did do with the dollar, though, is they kind of gave us a double portion weighting, so it's not going to affect us too much on the onset, but I think it really does affect us because when you've got another currency, and even though the Chinese yuan isn't backed by gold, they own mountains of gold in China, and they still do have manufacturing. They have an infrastructure. They've got some of this stuff, so other countries are going to want to start reallocating and repositioning some of their investments into Chinese currency because it's got somewhat of a gold backing, even though it's not gold backing per se. You don't have to have a yuan's worth of gold to print a yuan, but the China owns a ton of gold, and that basically is kind of a safety net backdrop. And so as this starts to roll on throughout the year, I think you're going to see money leaving the dollar, leaving the euro, leaving the yen, and going to the yuan. I would really expect 20 to 30% decline in the dollar this year because of that.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. The dollar's lost over 90% of its purchasing power since 1971. Silver, on the other hand, has proven to be a very stable form of wealth preservation over the years. And where do you buy silver? Silver.com, of course. Silver.com offers fantastic prices on gold and silver. Check out Silver.com today.
When disaster strikes, it's too late to prepare. PrepperRecon.com offers MOLLE-compatible individual first aid kits for your home, auto, or bug-out bag. These kits have everything you need to address a traumatic injury, including an Israeli battle dressing, quick clot, EMT shears, suture kit, Steri-strips, tourniquet, ACS chest seal, tough strip bandages, gauze, and so much more. $89 includes shipping. To buy your individual first aid kit, go to PrepperRecon.com and click the store tab at the top of the homepage. Order today before it's too late.
And then you just mentioned gold. There's been sort of a flip-flop as far as the pros and the cons, the bears and the bulls on the precious metals. UBS, which is a major global institution, I think they just issued a new target for something like 3,300 for gold. And at the same time, You got Mike Maloney, who I really, really respect Mike's work. He does great stuff. But I think he's been hanging out with Harry Dent a lot these days, which, when I think of Harry Dent, I think of demographic tunnel vision, which, you're kind of putting everything through the scope of just demographics. And I think he kind of leaves out some other factors when he thinks that we're really going into this deflationary cycle, which could be, but he thinks that silver and gold are also going to follow in that. And I think that Mike's actually sort of capitulating to his views to some extent. Where do you think we're headed from here with the precious metals? Right before the show, I said, I'm starting to feel like a genius for the silver I bought at $13.85, and just kind of waiting for the day that I feel like a genius for buying it at $35. Do you think that day's going to come?
Oh, I think it's going to come, and I think it's going to go well beyond that. I mean, if you look at Maloney, sadly, there is going to be deflation. There's no doubt. When people stop spending money, things sort of deflate. I mean, look at oil. So there is going to be sector-based deflation. But when the government's response to a sluggish economy is to print more currency, okay, that's inflationary. So you're going to have deflation in some markets. You're going to have inflation in others. Well, your financial metals, your gold and your silver specifically, will actually ultimately respond very much favorably to inflationary pressures, and that's how you can protect and preserve everything you've worked your entire life to accumulate. So as people lose jobs, as interest rates go up, you're going to have deflation in the housing market. You could have deflation in some other kinds of things that people are buying, like electronics and things like that. But oh my word, the more that the government prints, or central banks, I should say, which isn't the government, but as central banks continue to print, well, that inflationary pressure is going to devalue currencies, and it's going to actually cause the inverse to happen, which is hard, tangible currencies will automatically go up in value. And that's where I see gold and silver. I mean, today as we're speaking, silver's up 2.6%. Gold is up 1.6% in one day. So I disagree. Now, some of the top 15 analysts around the globe think that gold is going to end up somewhere between 7,500 and 15,000 before this is all said and done. Well, here's where it gets real interesting, Mark, is let's say that the most conservative guy is the biggest doofus on the planet, and he's half wrong. And it actually only goes to 37.50. Well, man, that's still 3.5 times greater than what it is today. I mean, even if the most conservative of some of the global forecasts, even if they're wrong, and you only get half of that, you're still tripling from where you are today. So I guess what I'm saying is the more things start to collapse around us, the more political upheaval, the geopolitical upheaval, the budgetary constraints, the debt that is unsustainable, gold and silver are going to continue to go up, and I think we're actually seeing that. Right now you're just seeing a reflection of, stock markets around the globe stink, so let's put some into gold and silver. That's a knee-jerk reaction, but I think the overarching trend is we've got unsustainable problems around the globe that we can't fix. And that's why gold and silver ultimately go through the roof as a safe haven type of an investment.
And all of these challenges that we've been talking about, they're all financially based. And, if we do have a major crisis this year or in years following, which we always do have major financial crises. So it'd be silly to think that there's not one coming at some point in the game. I guess a lot of the answers are also going to be economic, if the problem's economic. We're just starting out a new year, and a lot of folks are looking to turn over a new leaf. I just got back from the gym, and a lot of us are going to try to eat a little healthier this year, and other folks are quitting smoking, and we're doing all these things to try to get in shape. What about getting in shape financially? Do you think this is a good time to reprioritize our finances?
Oh, amen, yes. It's always a good time to do that, and sometimes things happen. You have an emergency medical bill and it puts your life completely out of whack for a while, or you lose a job or something happens. Well, this is where if you've planned properly along the way, those things don't have as much of a sting as they normally could. And simply what am I talking about? It's just budgeting. It's like I know that's almost a 4-letter word to most people when you say budget, because who likes a budget? But you know what? I don't view budgets, Mark, as bondage. I view it as freedom. I have this talk with my kids, and we talk about this stuff in my family because they would just love to spend all of their money on whatever toy, gizmo, or other device strikes them at the time. But it's good to save and have delayed gratification, and so really what it kind of boils down to for everybody is live below your means. Because really budgeting is freedom. When you have a budget and you stick to it, you're going to have the following results. So let's see if you live below your means, every month you're going to have more money than what you need at the end of the month. People who don't have a budget generally do the opposite, and they run out of money while they still have stuff that they need to purchase. I think it'll help you save up for things that you want to purchase down the road. Like my son who's 10. Every time he gets money in his pocket, there's the tendency he just wants to spend it on football cards or little things here and there, little trinkets, I would say. But boy, when something cool comes up, and I'm not saying that he's getting one of these things or even has one, but what's the big hot thing right now are those hoverboards. They're like $500 or $600. Well, if you spend all your money on the little things, you're never going to have it for the big thing that comes up. So delayed gratification is important, and having a proper budget will help people do that. It also ensures for a comfortable retirement. See, that way down the road, it's down the road a long ways for some of us, not very far for some of us, and some of us are already in retirement. But you know what? Make sure you start saving up early. And you know what? I can, in just a few minutes on this phone call, I can actually give you a foundation, a framework of how you can budget for success. So and why is this really important? Well, for me as a believer, because when I budget, I have more money at the end of every month. What does that mean? I have more money to give away. People who spend way too much, they're always, whenever there's a missionary that comes into town or whether there's a family or friend that needs help, they can never help out the way that they want to because they've spent all of that stuff on themselves and they didn't live by a budget.
Yeah, that's great. And you'll hear that a lot from Christians, that they can't afford to give. And whether you think that tithing is a Old Testament principle or a New Testament principle, giving is definitely very, very New Testament, and it's all through the New Testament scriptures. So it's definitely something that you have to think about. And what do you have to say to Christians that say they can't afford to give?
Well, I would say, as a wealth manager, whenever I have a client that tells me that, it's like, well, actually they'll say, Kirk, we're having problems. We always run out of money before the end of the month, and we're always just living hand to mouth and blah blah blah. So my first question is, how much do you give? Well, Kirk, we can't afford to give. It's like, you don't get it. You can't afford not to give. When you give, Malachi says you open up the floodgates of heaven so much that you won't have room enough to contain it all. It's like God can do more on 90% than you can do on 100%. I mean, it's just, and he asks us to test him on that. So whenever I have a client who is having problems financially, I always know. Always. I mean, this is so weird, but 100% of the time, it's because they don't give.
Wow.
And it's not even 80% of the time. It's 100% of the time. That is their answer. I can't afford to give. We would love to, and once we get our lives straightened out a little bit, we're going to start giving because we do really have giving hearts. I hear this kind of stuff all the time. It's like, no, you learn how to give out of your need rather than out of your abundance, and watch what God does in your life.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Now, for the person that's just been winging it, where do they start? Can you talk to us a little bit about how they design a budget for their home? How do you prioritize that, and where do you start?
Yeah. And this is good for adults and for kids. We operate on this principle with my kids, first with money. I'm using the word allowance, but it's more like for chores. We pay them to do things. You don't just give them an allowance and say, okay, here's your $5 a week. You have them earn it, but even for adults. And so I've learned from some really wise people, Hans and Danny Johnson, who are friends of mine, Dave Ramsey. They all have some really good topics and things on how to set up a budget. So putting together kind of the best of the best from those, and I really, Danny Johnson's War on Debt is amazing. It's amazing. And Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, I think, get some of these budgetary issues that they come up with are just phenomenal. So here's where I would start. It's a 70-10-10-10 principle. It's like 70-10-10-10. What does that even mean? Well, it simply means you're living on 70% of your income. That's what you use to live on, pay bills like a car payment, insurance, food, clothes, whatever. And for your parents, this is what, so for my kids, though that's what they have for all of their little things. And for adults, you have rent and car payments and everything else in there. So that's your 70%. Live on 70. If you can live on 70, you know what? You're going to be able to weather almost every financial storm that comes throughout life. So what's the first 10? Well, that's giving. So that comes right off the top. Before anything else, you give 10%. And, the Bible calls this first fruits. It's just you give your best, not your worst. That's why you take that right off the top. You do it first. If you wait until everything else is allocated, sometimes you're not going to have any to give. And I'm raising my hand right here. I used to live that way. If I had a tough month or whatever, it's like, okay, I'll just delay my giving and I'll pay double next month. I did that when I was right out of college. I did that some when I was newly married, and it always ends up in disaster. It always ends up, you never end up giving. Well, that's robbing from God. So you have to come into the habit of giving 10% right off the top every single month, month after month after month. It just becomes what you do, and that's that first 10%. If you have it be your second 10% or come at the end, that's a recipe for failure. Really, learn how to give out of your need rather than out of your abundance. My family is actually living proof of this because when we had our daughter, our first child, I had a fantastic job. I was vice president of a big mortgage company. We were doing hundreds of loans a month. I mean, we were making a really good six-figure income. Well, I didn't like what the owner of the business, kind of how he was operating things, and so I left. I didn't want to operate under an unethical type management style. So we took a leap of faith and we just left. Well, that was the hardest year of my life because we went from making six figures a year to making, I think, $7,000 that first year as I started up my new business. The next year wasn't too much better. We made less than 20, but at least it was better than 7. Well, it was during that time we had nothing. Oh, my word, if I could have just been at zero, I would have been so happy because we were so far underwater. But you know what? We always gave our 10%. We always tithed. But here's where it's like, okay, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what else to do, so we decided to give 20% of our income. Granted, it was 20% of almost nothing, but it was a heart issue, and from that point on, miraculously, our lives turned around. It was just amazing, and every year, it just keeps getting better and better and better, and this is just God unlocking the floodgates of heaven because of a heart issue. And so the old adage is true. It's more blessed to give than to receive. The second 10% is save. So this is for stuff that you want to purchase in the near or immediate future. The last 10% is invest. And this is something that you never really touch until retirement. So So basically there you have it, 70, 10, 10, 10. 10 giving comes right off the top, 10 saving, and 10 investing. Your saving is for a rainy day. That's if your roof leaks and you need the insurance money to help pay for it. If you crash your car or you have a medical expense or you want to go on vacation or whatever. That savings you're going to use more immediately. The 10% at the end of your retirement, you shouldn't touch that until you retire, or else you're not going to have enough for retirement. If you can live on that principle, then I think you're going to be incredibly successful. People just have to learn to live below their means. And some of my clients say, well, Kirk, that makes a lot of sense and that's really cool, but boy, I don't really have any bills. I could live on 50% of my income. It's like, great. Then do 50, 20, 20, 10. Or do something, give more. Start to give more. The less bills that you have, the more you can live below your means, the more money you're going to have to give away, the more God unlocks the floodgates of heaven, the more successful you become because you have a giving heart. Really, the best investment that you can ever make, and don't think of it like this, because don't ever give to get. I mean, that's a trap that sometimes Christians can get into, more of a prosperity type message. You give because you want to give. You give because there's people out there that need, and if you ever needed a helping hand, you'd want people to give to you. When you give with a grateful heart like that, it's all a heart issue, Mark. But God's truths are universal, and His word never returns void, and amazing things will start to happen in your life. And that's how I would set up a successful budget for anybody.
That's the end of the first half of my interview with Dr. Kirk Elliot of McIlvaney Financial Group. Tune in next week for the rest of the show. God bless and happy prepping.
Are we living in a time of which there is more prophetic writings than of any period in history? Watch through the eyes of Noah Parker and his family as a global empire takes shape. Ancient writings are fulfilled, and the last days fall upon the once great United States of America. The Days of Noah, Book 1, Conspiracy by Mark Goodwin, is a fast-paced fiction thriller which looks at how modern conspiracies could play into biblical prophecy concerning end times. Buy The Days of Noah in paperback, Kindle, or audio edition at Amazon.com today.